Hey, folks. We got Zeb's computer in the same room. Let me get him to mute it. We'll start in 2 or 3 minutes.
Watson? Mm.
Now I'm ready.
All right.
If you want to check out these snazzy masks real quick while I model one.
Look good. Excellent.
Sure.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Okay, good. Hello, everybody. Looks like we got a small crowd today. I'd like to start with just some introductions. Let me see who's on the call. And just as a reminder to everyone, today's meeting is being recorded. As you may recollect, we are recording one meeting every month and uploading it so that individuals who are unable to attend will be able to. As a recommendation from the communications committee, we will also be, when and if
You're coming in and out, Zeb.
Oh, I'm cutting in and out.
I can hear you fine, Zeb. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was very choppy.
If my audio is cutting in and out, someone else please put in text so I could turn it over to somebody else if I'm having a connection problem. Because we're fewer than 50 people, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. If we exceed 20, then we'll use the chat format. So, as I was saying, we are recording today's meeting, and I just wanted to remind folks that as a recommendation from the communication committee, when we resume in-person meetings, we will likely be not only continuing to record one meeting a month, but we will also be live casting when we are actually having a meeting, just like we are right now. Imagine if we were in, say, the lower level conference room and there was a laptop set up in the corner broadcasting this, so people who can't make it away from their desk or who are needing to view it remotely for reasons, right, are able to attend and get those updates and information. We are, however, going to have to tighten up who we allow into the meetings. Just yesterday, in fact, I copied Adam, you and Rebecca on this. We had a member complaining that there were non-members on the call. So we definitely want to. DK, I'm just muting you because there's a lot of background noise. Okay. People should be able to unmute themselves. I believe that option is toggled. Is that correct, Adam?
Yes.
Okay, great. But I'm just muting you by default so we don't get all that background noise. So just as an update on that, that's what our plan is to broaden the reach of the site meetings to people who continue to work remotely even when we're back at the workplace. Okay, sorry, but I do realize we do need to do introduction. So let me see if there are any board members on. I see no board members on at the moment. My name is Zeb Feldman, CEMA OE3 business rep. Adam, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, Adam Cole, one of your CEMA OE3 business reps.
And Rebecca?
Good afternoon, everyone. Rebecca Armendariz, CEMA OE3.
Okay, great. So I have posted in chat, and I think Adam started off the agenda. I will repost it again. The reason you're going to see it a couple of times, for those of you that have been using Zoom are well acquainted. People who come in late to the meeting, we had 7 new joins, are unable to see what was previously posted in chat. So that's why that is going to be spammed to chat a little bit at the beginning stages of the meeting. So the first thing is county budget updates. So what I'd like to do is I'll just do a brief overview of this. We've been spending a lot of time at site meetings talking about this particular item, not only last month's 70 West site meeting, but also every site meeting up until. And we do have a video that briefly touches on the budget and then also goes into the components of layoff language. So county budget, where are we? As I would imagine you all should know, and if you don't, you're hearing it here, the county is in a contractionary state. We obviously are dealing with the aftermath of COVID-19 and the serious economic damage that has wrought on our county, state, and country. We have seen that the budget is contracting, as I mentioned, and the CEO and CBO have set reduction targets for every area in the county. Primarily, they're concerned with general fund allotments, right? So that means they're going to be much less concerned about departments that have a light or no reliance on the general fund. Take DCSS as an example, or parks, where there's almost no draw on the general fund versus heavy fund draw departments that are 100% general fund or enterprise funds and so on. So each department has received those cut targets, and we're looking at rolling days and timelines that those budget cuts will be put into place. So what does that mean? Initially, we already have the approved budget that's all online. You could see that it involves the deletion of vacant funded positions, as well as the reduction of contracted services, which includes CBOs, includes goods contracts, rentals, things like that. Right now, there is no elimination or layoff bumping of filled CEMA positions. So that's great news for everybody on the call. However, I think we can all put our long distance glasses on. I'm wearing mine already. And we can see down in the future that we've got serious budget cuts continuing to come. And what does that look like? So for the immediate future, and when I say immediate future, I'm specifically referring until October, I believe it is predictable that we will see no cuts of CEMA occupied positions. Vacant funded positions, we will see the loss of some of those. And we're seeing 1s and 2s here, department by department. So why do I say October, and what are kind of next waypoints with the budget process? Well, some of you know that the board is already making adjustments right now. And there are budget workshops that will be happening next month to revise the budget. For those of you that are very knowledgeable about the budget process, or have been through it yourself before, you know that the budget workshops are largely ceremonial. They are a legal requirement that the board has to hear from the community and representatives like us, union representatives and so forth. For the most part, unless titanic and seismic new information is coming through, they're going to proceed with the previously recommended budget. Every now and again, we will make an amazing argument about a particular position, especially if they're occupied, right? About why a position doesn't make any sense to cut, or that it's 90% non-general fund, why give up 90 cents to save 10? Or in the rare situation where we're cutting a position that's actually making money, right? Some executive didn't understand that cutting a revenue collection officer that makes $1 million a year but saves 80,000 just doesn't make any sense, right? Every now and again that happens. That's not the situation we're going to find ourselves in this budget cycle. So again, next waypoints. We're seeing the budget workshops later this month and next week. We are going to see additional budgetary information come from the state and federal government in October. We're specifically talking about CARES Act funding, ERAF funding, and HEROES Act funding. And these will reimburse, or are reimbursing and will continue to reimburse us for COVID-related activities, as well as the provision of essential government services that are persisting during this period of time. You also may be, for those of you that have been looking at the news, you're certainly aware that the feds have been giving is the wrong word, allocating money to the states, as well as printing some new money and giving them to various governmental services. We're trying to capture that as well through CARES and HEROES and get as much of that as we're eligible for. That's why some of you have been asked to tally up work that you've been doing that's pertaining to COVID and other reimbursable activities from the state and feds. We will get that information in October as to additional funding that's been released. And we will also hear from the state. When I say state, I mean the state of California. The state of California, what additional funds and rainy day money, if any, they will be allocating in October in their budget for this year from earlier, think April, May, with the governor's revise in May. They used one-time funds and kicked some budgetary decisions until October. So we'll also be hearing from the state what additional funds, if any, they will be giving to counties for providing those services. So
I believe a question is has a decision been made on the funding from the federal government? Is there any risk of us not receiving it?
So it's an interesting question. Not receiving it, no. It's a question of how much we receive. So we will certainly be getting funding from the federal government. It's a question of how much we receive. And I realize that's kind of a useless answer because, and I apologize for that, because it's like, well, if we get $1, that's effectively no money, right? I'm not that concerned about that. I'm more concerned about what is deemed reimbursable activities. And we certainly don't want to see a repeat of what happened with the initial ERAF funding, where the state and feds set up, if there's a city with more than 500,000 people, they get that funding. And the county kind of got shut out by the city of San Jose because we were the ones doing all of the COVID related work and actually provision of medical care, yet the city did very little and just captured that funding. So I'm not concerned that we won't get any funding. I'm concerned that we don't repeat that. And our lobbyists have already made that point nationally and at the state level. I know SEIU is on the same page, and I know the county's lobbyists are on the same page because this has been a national outcry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and to some degree, the net impact on the budget of that money is also going to depend on how much it is in relation to some of the shortfalls that the county wasn't expecting to have for this year. And we can see, for example, about how much revenue shortfall there was from not having patients come through VMC and the numbers that were expected, more than $100 million shortfall there in expected revenue. So what the COVID work reimbursement for them is really matters in comparison to what their shortfall was. And I think they're expecting to make up for that shortfall with reimbursement, but if that number falls short, that'll obviously be an issue. And if it's greater than it, then that'll be fantastic.
Absolutely. And then a couple of other budgetary points, then I'll turn it over to Adam and Rebecca, and then we'll take some questions. Is because the budget is such a large item to get your arms around. Not only am I not going to remember everything, but we also want to be responsive to questions. Also, included in all of this is our protection from layoffs. And what I mean by protection is that we have a 20 working day notification period. Roughly that translates to 30 calendar days. And so we have not been noticed of that. And we will alert you the second we are noticed of it. What we have heard is from board personalities and from the CEO on down is that they are very interested in talking about cost savings. And that's why we sent out that survey. I see Adam and Rebecca will go over the survey results next. We need to be responsive to that, because if we aren't, the only tool that the county has to balance that budget with in terms of unions is staff reductions, layoffs. And that's something typically we want to avoid, and we'll get into the survey results and how I think that verifies that assumption. So that's a big piece of the budget. We're not there yet, but we are getting all the signals from the county that they're very interested in discussing that. Just as an aside, I want to mention, in fact, to me, this is extremely, extremely good news. I want to share this with you all. You know that the court is ahead of the county in terms of budgetary damage. It's not the kind of ahead you want to be, right? They're ahead of us in the sense that they've received additional, funding cuts. They don't have property taxes to rely on or their own ability to raise funds as the county does. CEMA was able to successfully negotiate an agreement with the court to allow for voluntary separations, voluntary reduced work hours, and the voluntary long-term leaves. We took advantage of that. Luckily, we were able to achieve the savings that we set out to. Preliminarily, there's still a grace period where people can bow out of that. But because we hit the savings on a voluntary basis, it means that we get layoff protection for the next 12 months. So we're meeting with the court unit later today. They are going to be extremely relieved on that. And it's a reminder to people who still have an opportunity to back out. We've achieved that savings by about 3 to 4%. So if 4 people are like, never mind, I actually don't want to retire, it will upend that. And we need to get more people to do voluntary reduced work hours or something. So I think that will set a lot of minds at ease at the court, where if we do truly achieve that by the end of this month, they will be able to at least sleep easy for the next year. So that's a great relief for those folks. I don't think I'll pause and let Adam and Rebecca fill in on budget things that I may have missed. So go ahead, Rebecca and Adam, please.
Yeah, I think Zeb hit the waypoints that we're looking at as far as the other budgetary waypoints, so that folks have a sense of kind of what the next steps will be on CEMA's end and on the county's end. While there is, like Zeb said, that 20 working day, roughly 30 calendar day notice before layoffs, you would generally expect that the county would initiate the process of starting to talk about layoffs prior to that point. And we say talk about layoffs, talk about ways to reduce expenses in the budget, ways to save money. So for a general waypoint, I think we're expecting the county to reach out to us, the end of this month, possibly next month, to start those conversations. And that's where we'd be discussing kind of the options that were in the survey that folks took about other methods CEMA and the county can agree on to save money from the budget. And that would include things like, golden handshakes, retirement incentives, VRWH furloughs, et cetera. So I think we can expect that conversation to likely happen in the next couple of months based off where we can see the budget going. And then if we get to the point where the county's actually pulling the trigger on moving forward with layoffs, then there'd be some official notice at that point. So it's not something that'll just jump out of nowhere and surprise us by any stretch. And you can expect that when the county approaches us to start those conversations, the same way there were kind of regular updates coming out during the negotiation process from the team that was working on negotiations, you'll see updates from CEMA as we move forward in these discussions with the county about ways to save money in the budget. So it's not something that's, it's going to sneak up on us. We'll see it coming from a while away, and everybody will be involved in that process. And there'll be more opportunities for feedback and surveys from members about what direction we should be going.
Anything further you wanted to add to that, Rebecca?
I was just going to say that even though I mentioned it last month and at all of the worksite meetings, that we do as reps rely on you all to share with us any information where there could be cost savings, where there could be areas where we can save jobs, and areas where it doesn't make sense that you could flag for us, that where it wouldn't make sense for them to cut a job like Zeb mentioned. If it's a job that pulls down state or federal funding or grant funding, and it brings in more money than it would save, then of course, please flag those for us and let us know so that we can make sure to factor those in and negotiate for those.
Mhm.
And absolutely, I think when we get into the survey results, you'll see as well that we are, as always, taking the guidance of you, the membership. Of course, we have many constituencies. Membership is number one. Number two, of course, is the executive board, who we're seeking guidance from. And then, of course, we actually have to contemplate the employer, right? I know that they're not a constituent in in the purest sense, but if we just say, yeah, give everyone a Tesla and $1 million and we'll retire, well, it's just very clearly an unreasonable even countenance, right? So I don't know if we pause for just a moment and see if there are any specific questions about the budget. Feel free to unmute yourself or type in chat. I'll just pause for a few seconds to give people a chance to do that. All right, I'm not seeing any private questions or public ones. Are you guys? Nope. Okay, well then, why don't we go ahead and move into the survey results?
Great. So for anyone who didn't take the survey, I'll do a quick overview on what it contained. So the survey had about 6 questions, and it was focused on getting some direction from members about what CEMA's priorities should be in getting ready to go into these budget reduction conversations with the county. So there are about 5 or 6 questions in the survey. We got, I think, a little under 600 responses on the survey, which is a pretty good survey response for us. Not quite as high as some of those final ones we had around contract negotiations, but folks are obviously very invested in those final surveys there. But it was a good response. And from those questions, for anyone who didn't take it, the first question was kind of a rank order of these are some of the options that we'll have, some of the tools that are available to do budget, to meet budget reduction targets. And again, those include, incentivizing retirement through, cash payment, golden handshake, furlough / voluntary reduced work hours, deferring increases in the contract, rebargaining the contract, or actual layoffs. And I think that question, and I think most questions actually, we saw what kind of our expected response was going to be from CEMA, which is that, of course, options that are optional were of greatest interest to folks, which would be, the retirement incentives, BRWH and furloughs. Below that would be, delaying contract increases. And then folks were generally not interested in either rebargaining the contract to have, reduced benefits or layoffs. So I think that's largely what we expected. I think what might have been somewhat unexpected was the response rate we had on folks who were interested in taking a golden handshake if one was offered. And the reason I say it was surprising is that we knew there was a fairly small number of CEMA members during negotiations who were a couple years away from retirement. We did some demographic surveys and general surveys at that point in time, and we were just aware that CEMA as a whole is a much younger union than it was during the last recession, when there was a significant number of folks who were interested in a golden handshake. But I think at least the information I'm drawing from that is that COVID and where we are today is just, we're in a different place, as individuals, as families, as a community than we were a year ago when these surveys came out. And that whereas retirement might not have been something you were considering before, maybe folks want to move out of the area, maybe they're just not interested in working during the pandemic, whatever. Everyone will have their individual reasons. But that number was somewhat higher than we expected, which is helpful for us to know. Then I would say the last interesting question in the survey that maybe I wasn't expecting was there was this particular question about if CEMA was to agree to furloughs, should they be done in the same method that they were rolled out during the last budget contraction, which was that furloughs were done across the board equally with all departments, even where departments weren't impacted by general fund cuts. The directive from CEMA members was, yes, that was a good model, do it again that way. If we do furloughs, don't insulate departments where able. So on that question and other questions, this is the direction that we'll be taking forward into those initial conversations with the county whenever those get rolling. There will definitely be more opportunities for us to get feedback as things progress as well, as the situation matures, just as we had during negotiations. We had series of surveys and opportunities to give feedback as the situation changed. So folks can expect something similar here as well. And I had a private question here. Was the preference with the golden handshake? That was one of the questions on there. Would folks prefer years of service or a cash payment? And the years of service option was strongly preferred. I think about 2-to-1 over the cash option. That's definitely something we can take into those negotiations. But it'll be part of part of the conversation with the county where we eventually land. Towards the possibility of getting years of service. I think we have some reason to be optimistic about that, as during the courts bargaining over their kind of package deal over budget reduction targets. The county actually administers the court's retirement. It's an artifact of, the court employees used to be county employees. When they spun off, the county continued to administer the court's retirement benefit package. And there was some discussion about, under PEPRA, you're only allowed to do a golden handshake, once in a given time period. And if it's offered to the court employees, would that preclude the county from then offering it to county employees at some point in the future? There was some concern about that. So there was a reluctance to offer that to court employees, which I think at least we're reading to say that the county wants that to be an option they have on the table once these conversations come up for their employees. But we'll have more information on what the county and what we're looking at once those conversations start in proper. And again, I think we'd expect to be talking to the county about these topics in the next month or two, would be my guess. Okay. Any other questions, Rebecca or Zeb, you guys got? And again, just a reminder, if you can put questions, if they don't need to be private, if you can put them in the public chat, that's helpful, so we don't have to repeat them.
I haven't received any private questions about this item.
Okay.
Me neither.
Okay. So next item on the agenda, and again, for anyone who, comes up with an additional question related to the budget, feel free to share that. And if we have time at the end, we're happy to jump back and tackle those questions. I know that's what's on a lot of folks' minds right now. Next item on the agenda is CEMA masks. So for anybody who was on here earlier, you saw us modeling these very fancy CEMA masks. I think we're all pretty happy with the result. And big thanks to Laura Romero from the court, who took point on picking out the vendor we were going to use for the masks. So they're union made, have a fancy silkscreen printing of the CEMA logo on here. One of the more comfortable masks that I've worn. They're adjustable, they're a good size. They've got a little pouch in the back to put an extra piece of filter material in there. And we should have enough for all dues paying CEMA members. So Zeb, Rebecca, and myself have been working with liaisons and just other good contacts and departments to try to get these distributed. For some sites, we've kind of wanted to avoid just, being like, hey, during the pandemic, we're going to set up a table and everyone congregate here to get masks. So we're trying to avoid that and trying to get them out to departments where we're able to. So if you or someone from your department or a liaison in your area hasn't reached out about getting masks for your guys' area, reach out to your business rep. We'll be happy to set something up. And I think we've got fairly good coverage so far. Sorry, go ahead.
There was some left at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors there at 70 West last week. If you didn't grab one, go ahead and email me and I will do another drop. Tomorrow we'll be taking some to social services, the sheriff's department, and O'Connor Hospital. So if you're at any of those sites, the liaison there will be distributing them floor by floor. If you're not at any of those sites, go ahead and email one of us and we can help get them to you. Members only, please. Remember that it is for dues paying members only.
Yep. And if there's any question about that and the person doesn't know, which I'm usually skeptical of, but is occasionally true, you can always reach out to one of the reps and we can clarify someone's status for you.
Boo asked if they're only for on-site work. No, we are dropping them there, and I did leave them over at Component yesterday also, Boo, so you should be getting one. I think you still have a desk there. And so I did leave them there. But if you are working from home, we can still make arrangements for you to be able to get one.
Yeah. And the only wrinkle I would say is for anybody who's, visiting any of the hospitals or clinics, they don't want folks wearing cloth masks at those locations. They'll provide you a disposable one when you come in. But still the mask that I wear around otherwise when I'm not in the hospital.
And just a reminder, so Boo is saying that she can't go on site. We can, I'm not familiar with that particular restriction unless it is a hospital. For example, the public can go into some workplaces still. We're trying to get the liaisons to have them and distribute them. So you may be able to make an appointment that way. We're also trying to drop them off in person. We're kind of in a difficult situation here, right? Because on the one hand, we don't want to say, guess what? Everyone crowd into the lower level conference room. We've got 100 masks to give out, and then have some kind of a land rush, right? But then at the same time, we want to make sure to distribute it in a responsible way. As always, look, guys, if you get the mask, whether it's from us, from a liaison, there's a box on your floor, however it gets to you, do what you would normally do and sanitize it, right? Wash it, sanitize it, however you would normally sanitize a mask. It's probably been handled by somebody, certainly at the manufacturer or by us or your liaison or whatever before it gets to you. So sanitize it the way you would anything else.
And Boo was saying they're not able to come on site, but I did, there was members there at the site. Maybe I won't reveal their names if there's a policy or a directive given for them not to be at the site, but there was folks there at Component when I went by yesterday. So if you're able to, check your desk. If not, email me and we'll make arrangements to get you one.
Yeah, and we can't have folks, unfortunately, still gathering in numbers in the office, but I'm sure we'll be able to arrange, dropping by the Union Hall to pick one up if you'd like to. We can't invite you in for lunch, unfortunately, but I'm sure we can figure something out in those cases where folks have been directed not to be on site. Next item we had here was on the arbitration update and timeline. I don't see any nurses on the call here, so we'll make this brief just for folks who've been following along, but we've escalated the contract implementation issues to the arbitration level, have identified an arbitrator, and have 2 dates that we're currently looking at. Unfortunately, in general, because of COVID, the schedules for a lot of arbitrators are kind of impacted at the back end of the year here. A lot of arbitrations were canceled in kind of that March, April, May timeframe, under the early supposition that this would be a brief pandemic and we'd all be able to congregate in the same room in the near future. Unfortunately, we all know that didn't turn out that way. So we're looking at November will be our time frame for the arbitration, which means generally 1 to 2 months, hopefully 1 month for a response from the arbitrator. So we're still looking to get a resolution of this contract implementation issue by the end of the year. And again, the issue is that our nurses didn't receive the lump sum bonus. The county has a stance that they're not entitled to it, which we think runs directly contrary to the language that says all CEMA members effective May 4th receive this bonus. So they have a little bit of a baffling argument here. And we're fairly confident that we'll get a resolution here, but as in any situation where there's a third party neutral involved, we obviously can't promise anything. We can just say we feel confident in the language, as do OE3's attorneys who have reviewed the case with us. So hopefully we'll get a resolution by the end of the year for our folks in those groups. Next item we have on the agenda, some changes with. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Zeb.
Before you leave that topic. So everybody understands, and I think most of you do, but whenever there is a serious contract violation, we've attempted to resolve this informally. It's important for the union to occasionally flex its arbitration muscle. And the reason for that is the employer, Santa Clara, and I always say this, Santa Clara is a benevolent employer. They're generally very considerate. They try to make allowances for employees. I know some of you may have had contrary experiences to that. Believe me, I've worked with horrible employers. Santa Clara is not one. What is important to me in this issue, in this particular case, even though it affects a fair number of people. What's the number, Adam and Rebecca? Maybe 80?
Yeah, a little less than 100.
Okay. So here's another example where we may shortly escalate something to arbitration. The broad ranges. We have broad range classes that the county is, most of them, they have granted. We have maybe 50 broad range classes. They've given the 2 appropriate raises to, let's say, 40 of those 50. To 10 of them, they're saying, hey, we don't need to do it. It's a broad range. Yeah, I know we said the contract says 3%. We don't want to give it. A victory in this arbitration, which I am predicting, I'm not guaranteeing, right? A victory in this arbitration strengthens our hand when we try to enforce other components of the contract. So it's important, I'm not saying we're just periodically every year just going to pick a fight to go to arbitration on, but I'm saying that when there's a very clear contract violation, even if it's 5 people, 1 person, 10 people, we want to make sure that the county is reminded that we have solid contract language that we have an ability to enforce. And that's one of the reasons that this one is so important. It's a very, very good fight that we've picked. And it's one that I think will have cascading ramifications for other, not 100% fights, but 80, 60% fights that maybe we can wiggle an enforcement into without having to go to arbitration. So I just want to raise that even if you're not a nurse, I think most people on this call will experience some kind of benefit from a victory from this if we in fact achieve that, which I think we will.
Yeah, it's a great point, Zeb. And there's also, I would say, a philosophical through line between this issue and the other issues that we've had with contract implementation that just kind of comes down to what is the definition of everyone with regard to the contract. And CEMA's position is that everyone means everyone with regard to everyone gets this 3% increase, everyone receives a lump sum bonus, in the county, for one reason or another in each of these cases, taking a different stance on how far everyone applies. And this is a particular frustration. And the other benefit it speaks to here is just an eye towards enforceability of other contract language and also bargaining. This is something that CEMA explicitly brought up at the bargaining table numerous times during the bargaining process. Do we need greater clarification in a number of areas about who these groups are? Do they need to be further defined? And maybe this is a little bit of a lesson learned for us for the future. But there are numerous areas in the contract that refer to groups in this way. So there's definitely a benefit to getting this issue settled now for the duration of this contract, and possibly some learning from CEMA for the future about even where it seems like a bunch of rational people on one day can agree to what everybody applies to, who everybody applies to. Maybe we can't necessarily rely on the county to stick with that, half a year down the line. Okay. Next item we had on the agenda were some changes to what changes we're currently seeing with regard to our DSWs, particularly some of our contact tracers. And I would say there's two things we're seeing here. The first one is with regard to we're seeing I think the rhetoric about where we're at right now in the response to the COVID pandemic has been, and we've seen this both from Dr. Smith and from ESA and the EOC, that we're kind of past the initial emergency response phase. We're starting to move towards what business as usual is going to be like for, at the very least, until February. I think we're all expecting substantially longer than that. I don't think any of us will be surprised if we still have folks operating as DSWs a year from now, particularly in that contact tracer role, barring some kind of miracle vaccine that comes out. And part of the concern from CEMA's perspective, and I think anyone who's been tapped as a DSW is aware of this, that whereas there's normally certain restrictions on the county side about changing working conditions, changing hours of work, changing location, normally required to go through the meet and confer process. Some of that can be abridged during emergency crises, public safety, you have to make these changes immediately. So the county's had a lot of leeway, and they haven't had to go through that normal process that they would go through to make these changes. Now that I think everyone's in some agreement that we've kind of moved past the emergency point, we're seeing a number of areas are now starting to make changes about how can we settle into having our DSW Smart Department permanently deployed. In some cases, that means switching to a rotation model, switching away from a rotation model. What does that mean for CEMA members with regards to changes that are being made to their schedules, their hours of work, their working conditions, et cetera? So you're going to start to see CEMA reasserting that there's some appropriate due process that needs to go through here before these changes are made. They're no longer need to be made, immediately effective tomorrow for public safety. We're kind of past that emergency response, and we're setting up what work is going to look like for a substantial period of time to come. Very likely a year, possibly longer. So for members who are in that situation, where DSW assignments are being changed, schedules are being changed, et cetera. Previously you would have heard from CEMA, yes, the county can make these changes without much or any notice. Unfortunately, that's where we're at. If that's continuing to happen, please reach out to CEMA now. We're starting to reassert these meet and confer MMBA rights that all CEMA folks are entitled to prior to these kind of changes going into effect. The other piece with this is with regard to I think some unfortunate realities that we've seen for folks who are currently deployed as DSWs and are trying to either transfer or promote. Would you want to explain that one, Zeb? You were able to get some good directive from Jeff and Miguel on this one.
Sure. So thank you for that intro. As Adam points out, there's kind of two things here. One is the ongoing emergency, right, that we find ourselves with COVID. At a certain point, it's not an emergency, it's just an ongoing new normal. And that's a transition that Adam was talking about. The other piece to this is, and why that's significant, as Adam pointed out, is it relieves the emergency status where they still have to, the county now has to return to a meet and confer stance. It can't just say, emergency, I'm moving all these folks around. Okay. For those of you that are hiring managers or that are thinking about applying or have applied for other positions, here's where DSW contact tracing and assignment to the EOC comes in. We've had members, I have 6 documented cases. I don't know if Adam or Rebecca have any. I have 6 documented cases where individuals have interviewed for a position and the hiring manager or executive has said, wow, you're a really great fit for the department, but you're assigned to contract tracing, but you're at the EOC. I can't make an offer because I need somebody right now. Now, look, I totally understand that. If I'm a hiring manager and I'm hiring for an accountant 3, I need an accountant 3 to be doing accountant 3 work when I hire that person. I'm not trying to hire somebody so that they get back to me in 9 months and start doing accountant 3 work, right? So I understand that. Here's the challenge. You didn't make that decision. You were assigned. In all likelihood, there are a few volunteers, right? Most people were assigned to be at the EOC, assigned to be a DSW or contact tracing. We can't have our membership negatively impacted because somebody makes a designation about them. So the clarification that we got from Jeff, Miguel, and Labor Relations is that, one, managers should not be discriminating on that basis. That's fine to say. I think we all know the reality may be something different. But here's what's perhaps more important, that those assignments will reside with that classification, not with that person. So if I'm, in my earlier example, if I'm an accountant 2 and I'm assigned to contact tracing and I'm applying for an accountant 3, and I get selected for the accountant 3, I am now relieved of that contact tracing duty in my new accountant 3 position. Now, it does create other problems, right? Now it's a sad day for whatever department I left and am now in a new department or new area as an accountant 3, because now they have to go find another accountant 2 to do those duties. or someone else in that department. But it means that at least I'm not prejudiced against getting a new position because of that designation that somebody in the county made, that I had to be a DSW or other derivation. So that's kind of the update. If you're a hiring manager, do not discriminate on that basis. Be sure to seek clarification from, I'm going to call it the sending department, the department that you're hiring from, that they will have to identify someone else to take on that role, because when you hire that person, they're not going to be expected to do that anymore. And then as a reminder as well, if you are someone who's interested in applying, go ahead and apply. Don't feel like you're going to be discriminated against because of that.
And just a quick qualification, this will apply to folks that are doing kind of the more generally applicable DSW roles. This isn't going to apply to you if you're the, emergency preparedness responder from VMC currently deployed to work in the EOC. You're the only person capable of being likely to do that work. That work will likely follow you. You'll continue to remain deployed. But for anyone with the generally transferable skill set that they're using in their DSW work, this will apply, which is going to be the majority of our folks. Fewer of our folks probably who are working in health and hospital system and are deployed, this will apply to, but generally it should apply to everybody else. Okay. And we have, last piece on here is updates for the CEMA elections. Would you like to take this one, Rebecca?
Yeah, I'd like to let folks know that the nomination period is open. If they'd like to be nominated or sign a petition for somebody who is running for the executive board office, nomination petitions are due by Friday the 14th at 3 p.m. They could be sent via email, or they could be delivered under our door if nobody's there at the CEMA office. The nomination petition was attached to our CEMA Voice on Monday and last Monday as well. And if you don't have it and you would like it, please email any one of us and we can send it right back to you. Or the elections.
Yeah,
the elections commission. Yeah, the elections. You can email the election committee at election@sccema.org, and I'll put that in the chat box shortly. I'll go over the timelines for anyone who's interested. So like I said, by 3 p.m. on the 14th, this Friday, the nominating petition is due. On the 17th, the election committee will be reviewing these petitions and then releasing the names of everybody who qualified. So qualification means that you're a member in good standing, you paid your dues, and that the folks who signed your petition are also members in good standing who paid their dues. On the 31st, we'll be sending an electronic link via email to all CEMA members in good standing so that you could vote on the nominees, and their statements of qualifications, right? Their statement as to why they're running will be posted on the website for everyone to read. The closing of voting will take place on September 7th at 11:59 p.m. So the final day to vote via electronic email will be September 7th, and that is a Monday at 11:59 p.m. And then we'll verify the results and release that the winners by September 11th.
Thank you.
So I'll post that email address now for any questions or for a petition to be emailed to you.
And if you could email that link email address that Rebecca is about to provide, that would be, do not contact the business reps individually, because we don't want to have a situation where somebody say emails me and I slam my foot in the car door and I'm out sick for the next 3 days. And then it's like, but I sent my thing to Zeb and nobody responded. And we want it to be, the election committee is looking at these every day and they're able to respond. So don't email us individually. Don't, text some old business rep's number or whatever. We want to be sure that this is handled properly. So do
Yeah, the
election.
correct thing to do is to send it to the election committee. I just posted the email, election@sccema.org. Also, because as business reps, we're not allowed to get involved in the elections in any way. So just to keep it clean and separate, contact the elections committee, and that is a committee of CEMA members who are not running, who are impartial, and will be handling all of the process.
And then just last thing I would share on this real quick, I had a couple of folks reach out. I understand there was some direction that came out from Dr. Smith recently, reminding folks not to be using county resources for anything to do with elections. He's specifically speaking about our local elections here we have coming up, or national. You know, public employees shouldn't be seen to be using public resources for any kind of campaigning for any particular elected official, anything like that. That does not apply to, you know, elections we're having internal to CEMA. There's no prohibition on using your work email or, you know, DocuSign or something to collect signatures for your petition, anything like that. It was specifically speaking about, you know, our non-union elections, general governmental elections. So no concerns there.
And I also, yes, thank you for all that information. The timelines have been published. I do want to share that at this time, CEMA staff are not taking, you know, myself, Adam, Rebecca, OE3 staff, whatever, we're not taking any position. I had to talk to legal counsel at the last round of elections. We are able to take a position as staff members, you know, and say, hey, I think you should vote for so-and-so. We typically don't like to, because it's, you know, it's kind of putting our thumb on the scale, right? For those of you that have worked with us and respect our professional judgment, it really is putting the thumb on the scale. Where I make no apologies for putting a thumb on the scale is when, for those of you that remember in years past, we had a group of people that wanted to disaffiliate. Well, I'm going to put my elbow on the scale as much as I can and be like, yeah, please don't get rid of the union. Like, that's kind of bad news for all of us as union members. So those are certainly circumstances where we would weigh in, or at least I would weigh in. I can't speak for Adam or Rebecca. I certainly would never order them to weigh in. But we may, it's unlikely, but you know, oftentimes people just come to their rep and say, hey, who's a good candidate? So that's something that also happens, and we're aware of that happens. I did have a private question. Oh, I guess I'll pause for questions on the election. I did have a private question about the pension that I wanted to address. So I'll pause for a moment for questions on the election. I see something about account. Oh, that's Glenn talking about account for masks, not account for the election.
Yeah,
okay.
That was for me.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't see any questions about that. Just general advice I would give, and I would give this to anybody who asks. If you are seeking office, the minimum number of signatures is 10. Do yourself a favor and get 15 or 20. The reason I say that is invariably somebody thinks they're a member and isn't. They haven't signed up yet, but sent in the form. Or, and this happened, in fact, to somebody on this call who tried to run, and somebody said, yeah, I'm a CEMA member. And it turned out I don't remember what union they were a member of. They were a member of Architects and Engineers or 521 or something. And they actually thought they were a CEMA member, right? They're like, yeah, I'll sign that form. And then you're short one and you can't be approved then. So do yourself a favor and get an extra 5 or 10. I would even play it safe. 20 people is not a heavy lift. If you can't get 20 signatures through DocuSign, I don't know how you're going to get the 500 votes you're going to need to win or whatever it is. But do yourself a favor and get the 20 things through DocuSign. DocuSign's totally acceptable, and do that. You don't have to go and cough all over everybody and get signatures in hand. So, okay, probably shouldn't have said that since it's being recorded. Sorry, everybody. Okay. So, let me address that private question we had. There's not a reason that it's private. There's no confidential information. I'm just going to read it. Would like to know what your take is on these two matters pertaining to the long-term impact on CalPERS funds. That's our pension fund. CalPERS pension funds have reported that they're losing approximately $70 billion because of the coronavirus. The other concerning issue is CalPERS investing in companies like based in China, where major stakeholders are being punished economically and then they don't say this, but there's an allusion to a pending trade war. With so much tension going on between the US and China, this is likely to impact these funds. Yes, absolutely. So there are several things. One is that I do not understand how the stock market continues to go up. This just does not make any sense to me. But I guess I'm old fashioned, right? I feel like people need to be working and earning money and building stuff to like make the stock market go up. And apparently that's not the reality. So, okay, the stock market is going up. Has CalPERS lost billions of dollars? You bet it has. We were overperforming for, let's say, the last 2.5 years leading into the crisis. We started to perform well, then the bottom fell out. Now the CalPERS is performing well or not. I haven't seen that $70 billion number, but I do know that they posted losses for the first quarter post-COVID, and now they're posting gains because they lost a lot and the stock market's generally doing well. So going into this, CalPERS was 70.5% funded, and versus previously they were 69.5% funded. So what does that mean? Every pension assesses how funded it is. And if you're 100% funded, that means that you have everything you need to pay out all of the people and you're taking in the appropriate amount of money, right? Being 70% funded is not horrible. It's not great. Usually you're looking for 70+%, usually 80+% is more comfortable. When you fall below 70% and 60%, that's when you hit the so-called red and orange lines where changes can be made to the pension. We're not in jeopardy of that right now. Also, CalPERS adjusted its contribution rates upwards. So what that means is every employer who pays into CalPERS has a set contribution rate based on their employee and the cost of their benefit. In Santa Clara, we have a very generous benefit, which is 2.5% at 55. Other employers do not have this, right? Take the city of
Ellie, take these to your Nina.
Sorry? Oh, I see you muted. Sorry. Okay. And so we have a very strong pension and pension benefit at 2.5%. All you have to do is look around at other employers, like say the city of Santa Clara, well, Santa Clara too, but I was referring to the city of San Jose, where they have 4 different pension tiers. We only have 2 required by law, 2. They have 4 optionally. And their current one is, I think, minimum retirement age is 62.5, and they're looking at a 1.25% benefit at that age. So just much, much worse, right? So to address this question in particular, am I worried about investments in China? I just generally am, because I don't like the labor practices of China. From an economic perspective, China is performing okay. There is the trade war that, I could call it a war. The possibility of tariffs and embargoes being placed upon one another from the Trump administration and the Chinese administration. As you know, or you may know, there's been a lot of tariffs on steel. There's been a lot of tariffs on agricultural products traded back and forth, technological IP. And then now, of course, we have the most recent impact with TikTok, right? Where Chinese-owned company, Trump says you got 45 days for TikTok America to be sold to an American company, or we're banning it, or I will ban it. Trump will ban it. So yes, I think there is some likelihood of economic damage. I want to be clear, CalPERS right now is still positively funded. We're not in jeopardy of pensions going away or losing the pensions. And I believe CalPERS has made the appropriate assessment, which was, we have economic damage, our investment portfolio declined in the first quarter. I'm going to act now to increase the contribution rates that member organizations have to give to keep it. So I think CalPERS has made the right call of doing that. I also want to impress upon people that our downside risk is lessened by PEPRA 2013. For those of you that remember, 2008, 2009, the so-called contribution holidays that Santa Clara took advantage of, where stock market was roaring. And CalPERS said, guess what, guys? Our investment portfolio is doing so great. If you don't want to contribute for your members, you don't have to. Santa Clara said, sweet, let me spend that money. That's no longer allowed. So even in the good times, which we had, from a stock market perspective up until now, Santa Clara and all other contributors had to keep putting in per person, even though the investment portfolio was outperforming expectations. So am I worried about it? Yeah, of course I'm worried about it. I just hope that people understand that there are robust safety nets, like the increase, like the shields against pension spiking, and that I think we're making the right moves in terms of getting those member contributions up. Not your contribution, the contributions of the employers.
Yeah.
So concerning, yes, not alarming, I think is probably the right way to phrase it. I don't know if Rebecca or Adam, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think the only other wrinkle to that I would add, and I think this might have been part of what that member was asking about. I think folks likely saw this was a story back from pre-COVID times. I want to say around February. There were some concerns in the press about CalPERS chief investment officer. Ben Meng was under some scrutiny for particular investment choices and some level of relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. That was back in the news about a week ago. He resigned. So they'll be getting a new chief investment officer in there that might signal some changes and where CalPERS, making its investments if they're going to be shifting money away from China. It's something we'll, keep an eye on, see what changes there are at CalPERS at the top level in the coming weeks.
Great. Okay, well, we're just past 1. Is there any closing questions or comments people wanted to make? Nope. Okay, well then thank you everybody for your kind attention. I'm sure Adam and Rebecca want to say goodbye as well.
Okay, stay safe everybody. Take care.
Bye guys.
Have a good afternoon, folks. I'll see some of you tomorrow.